Da da da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. If you're anything like me, you're feeling out the tension. I just having updates going on in my account. And Windows is so sneaky. They know I am a Chrome girl. I am a Google girl through and through. And they're always trying to get them as the default for my administration. And in that moment you have to go through the process and you're afraid you're going to hit buttons that's going to make it so that they're boss. And then I come in here and I hit my live button and I see all these windows popping up and it agitates me. I am not super technically inclined. I am grateful for the resources online that help me out, for those few people that I know that give me advice and come down and piddle around with my stuff every once in a while. I also grateful that I'm able to sit in on some workshops and some master classes if they are very inexpensive, preferably no cost at all. And I am grateful to be welcomed into these workshops and these classrooms. But again, I am on my own for the most part in what I do. And I bumble along just like everybody else does who works on YouTube, who's a content creator, who's in thought leadership out there, you know, and it is sometimes quite nerve wracking. But in that being jiggled up every once in a while, you can kind of be proud of yourself that you're even trying, because there are lots of people who would be loving doing what I do or maybe doing their own thing online. But because they allow their anxiousness, hello, Tammy, because they let their anxiousness take over, their mind take over and say, you can't do that, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not creative enough. If you thought of it, right? If you even thought of the possibility, that just kind of eliminates that idea that you're not creative. You are very creative. And also, to even take into consideration these things, you're going to have to add courage and bravery. It's only in that moment that you listen to those voices going on, right? That says, no, you can't do it. For me, for the most part, I was actually in some content today about the ego and about those voices in our head that talk us out of situations and stuff. For the most part, I I think I would welcome a little bit of guidance from my own head. The only thing I could do is cheer myself on and say, try anyway. If you fail, you can try again. And if you try again and you fail, you try again. Keep trying again until you know for sure you are not getting through, that it is definitely a no go. You hit the boundary between United States and Canada and they say no, nothing you can do is going to get you into the States. And then that's when you just leave it out there, right? And just say, right? Don't cry over spilt milk. You gave it your best shot. There are people out there who didn't even try, right? And after my live show today, I'll go back in to make sure that My administrator is still Chrome and Google, that everything is good. I didn't hit a red button that gave that gave Windows total control of my content, and and just be content with that. And it's something that I did learn in this process over the past half a dozen years, maybe 10 years, right? That it's important for us to trust in ourselves. And you guys can hear the fire engines or the ambulances going by. We're going to send them out some good cheer that they get to their destination. Everything is going to be okay. And they'll be able to turn around right away and go right back to the station. But I was in that content today, about how we talk ourselves out of things. And for me, I was trying to, your ego's talking to you. I was like, nobody's talking to me, right? Yes, I'm thinking, but that is in that totality of myself, that synthesis of myself, right? It's just not Cindy going off like this. There is that moment of being able to just sit with myself, and in that partnership have a discussion with myself, to go over things, to rehash things, to look at the options and opportunities and those decisions that I have to make, and come to my own conclusions, right? But it is a synthesis with myself, but it's not actually voices, in the idea that, you're actually hearing voices. It's just thoughts, right? It's thinking. It's well, that's exactly what it is. I'm not somebody, right, who is comfortable just talking to themselves, but I understand, in working with things that come across my path, that it's important to vocally, right? Not just inside my head, because I'm a thinker. I can be in there all day long and not be interrupted by anybody. And I'm perfectly content in that. Me, myself, and I. But I've come to understand also that it's important to vocalize, right? To actually get my ideas out there, to get my thoughts out there, to get my ask, right? Because I was somebody who was brought up not to ask. And, it's uncomfortable for me. Not only am I not asking others, now I have to learn to just ask to the the surroundings that I'm in, and just trust that whoever or whatever is going to hear me, and whatever the needs are in that moment, right? I don't always get what I want, but it's that idea, I always get what I need. And I trust that what's meant to come across my path is going to get across that boundary, right? And if it doesn't, then that's the way it was meant to be. And I'm not going to cry over spilt milk. I'm not going to beat myself up, right? But I'm going to try, right? I'm going to try, because I do recognize that when I vocalize, that it's for prosperity, right? It's for somewheres in the future, that if nothing else, my phone, my Gemini is going to pick it up, and somewheres down the road, it might not be a couple of years from now, might not be 100 years from now, I might be long gone, 100 or 1,000 or thousands of years from now. But when that technology, because we're moving pretty fast, we are more than dipping our toes and our fingers into things that we never, ever, ever thought was possible. And I can't imagine even 1,000 years from now. And we're moving pretty fast. We're right. I can't imagine that 1,000 years that it would take that long, right? If I'm certain of it, because we do have better understandings and better connections, and for people like me who were brought up not to ask, right? Or brought up to feel that they don't matter or they don't have anything to contribute, that nobody is interested in what they've got to say. Well, there's a reason why I'm a Google girl, because as a small man, I have a voice, right? And if that technology comes across, and in this moment, right, that I haven't got it all figured out, nobody's got it all figured out, but 1,000 years from now, what are the possibilities? And in those possibilities, to be able to come in. And that's why it's so important for content creators to be genuine. Because if there is an opportunity to, I'm not going to say resurrect Cindy, but maybe in a way, in that cloning, if we get so close to extinction that they actually have to be able to resource the past, well, here I am, right? In the most genuine form that I can possibly be. And to be able to bring back Cindy after I've been gone 1,000 years, that would be pretty cool. But if I was not genuine in that, if I didn't vocalize, and here I am 6 days a week, you guys know I vocalize, right? And also, I've gotten into the habit, and this is something for somebody who doesn't want to be in front of the camera. They don't want, right? I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be heard. I was that person that just stood off in a corner and just was a spectator, a peeper, and a learner in that, right? But I didn't want to be seen. I wanted to be visible, invisible my entire life, right? And it was only in stepping into those uncomfortable spaces and accepting I'm not technically inclined in the moment, but I can learn as I go. And in the lessons that I pick up along the way, I've learned to ask, right? And that's pretty incredible to be able to have that ability to do that, because there are lots of people out there who do not have that ability. They're like I was. They don't want to be seen, they don't want to be heard, or maybe they do, but because of those other aspects of feeling dejected and rejected and feeling like they don't matter and they don't have anything to contribute, they don't even try. When I first started on YouTube, quite often what I would do, because it was a very confusing process for me, to be able to learn to open up. What I would do is I would pull up my camera on my phone and I would just put it on my tripod, and I would make a video, right? I wouldn't post it. I would list it as unlisted, and it would go into my Google Photos, and it was what gave me that idea. If nothing else, Google can resource those unlisted. They have full permission on my channels, right? And on my content, and they're the administrator. So they have full rights to everything that I put out there, including the unlisted. And we know that when we're right? We're not in front of other people. We can be fully present with ourselves, fully genuine. And it's a very it's so helpful. It was so helpful to me. Now I have it, I called them my Google diaries is what I called them. And I would usually talk for 20 minutes and then I would turn the camera off. And then sometimes I would go back in for another 20 minutes, depending on the topic that I was talking. And I would talk about everything. I'd talk about my feelings. I'd talk about my problems. I would talk about my family. I would talk about my lifestyle. And in a totally genuine way, too. And, I'm thinking back now, like, those are there. They're there forever, right? And if there was that possibility 1,000 years from now that, Cindy could come back. But I wouldn't want Cindy to come back to say, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The topic of discussion is going to be this," because it's not genuine, it's performed, right? It's not in my nature. And it can sometimes make it a little bit more difficult because you have to always be mindful of your being genuine. So don't put your foot in your mouth, don't say something rude, don't say anything discriminatory, right? Don't say anything that is going to hurt your relationship with the people that you network with, and your platforms, which are for me is YouTube and Google, right? And Chrome. It's all just a package of the same product. And this is home for me, and this is where I've learned my craft, practiced my craft. And somewheres down the road, even if I am genuine and casual and divvy out those conversations in a layman's form, because again, the people that I want to reach were the people I was, where I got stuck, where I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be heard. Or maybe I did want to be seen and didn't want to be heard. But I was terrified in that. And just to allow myself to be drawn into it and having all those lessons and being here 6 days a week, right? It's in that consistency of always showing up that we get better and better at what we're doing. Like you could just ask Tammy, go back to some of those live shows that I did 10 or 12 years ago, and you wouldn't even recognize me. You wouldn't recognize me physically, and you wouldn't recognize me emotionally or mentally or in the way that I present, because maybe in the beginning I did play that role of, you know, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, the topic of discussion. And I would even have small, I would just be all professional and stuff. And I know I used to hold my pen all the time, right? It's just kind of a comfortable state for me. But not only is it a comfortable state for me, it's to represent that, I have something to say, right? I have something to contribute. I am a student. I am a teacher, right? And I'm a participant in my very own lessons. And the very least I can say is I'm willing, right? And willing is such an important word when you decide to step your foot into something that's scary, right? That's unfamiliar, where you're uncomfortable, where you don't have those skills. But we live in this digital age now, you guys, right? Everything is learnable. You could just ask a question, right, to Gemini or Chat GPT, and they'll walk you through the process. There is a video, a how-to video for absolutely everything. There's some amazing YouTube teachers online if you ever wanted to, right? Bring one of your interests, one of your hobbies online. If you wanted to have a voice, right? And didn't quite know how to start, you can start with those private listed Google diaries like I did, right? And then you can go in and watch your own video that you made and be your own critique. I right? I go in and watch my live shows all the time. I go in and watch my podcasts all the time, right? And it's important, not in a mean way in critiquing to say, oh, you're so stupid, look what you did there. There are moments when you go, you could have done a little bit better there, or maybe you shouldn't have said that. But then that's an opportunity to, right? Maybe ask, can you show me how to cut things out of my video? Because you can do it right in your studio. They have editors in there where you can just go in and take little snips out of your videos and just patch them together and, make really nice videos. Now, I do my live, so I don't edit anything. Whatever comes out, right? And I trust in that partnership with myself, right? And that's the idea in working with the things that come across my path. If it's able to get across my path, that's something to work with, right? If that sign that says no, right? You're not going near that. You recognize that every time you try, something disastrous happens. Then give it a few tries, because I'm a believer in pushing back at what pushes you, because there's always a pushback. The learning process is one great big pushback. But again, don't cry over spilt milk. If you keep pushing back and you keep failing, right, then sometimes you can say you gave it your best shot. And it doesn't mean to quit, it just means to make a different choice, to do a 45-degree turn, right? If you're into doing a 360 or 180, have at her. But for my most part, I'm big on baby steps, right? It takes a bit longer, but you're doing it properly. You're not bypassing the lessons, right? So you're taking it all in. If you don't find it interesting, then you're skipping it. And you don't know in this moment you don't need that lesson. But say next year, 10 years from now, and you get yourself into some big doo-doo and you go, "Oh my goodness, I skipped that lesson. That came across my path and I didn't need it, so I just said forget it and I was on to something else." And in that moment you've lost out in that, or you have to do the extra reps and, right, get back there. And I'm a big believer, right, if you're at the finish line and you are not the master in what you're doing, but you made it across the finish line, you know what, go back there and rehash and re-practice and redo what you didn't do properly, what you didn't pay attention to, or maybe that you paid attention to and you did do the reps in that. But it's a weak point. You recognize it's a weak point in yourself and go back there and take the lesson again. And I've done that lots of times. I did that with Carl Jung. Oh my goodness, Carl Jung he's one of the top psychologists ever in the world, right? And he was introduced to me, I would have to say, at least 5 or 6 years ago. And periodically, his ideas and his content would come across my path. And lots of times it was in other thought leadership and other people who work in emotions that they would speak so highly of him, and they would talk about subjects. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll go in and see what Carl Jung's got to say. And I keep giving him some shots, and every time I was just like, oh my goodness, I don't get this. I don't understand this. He's speaking Chinese. Like, it was totally foreign to me. And in that moment, it just was not sticking, right? Because at that moment, it wasn't the prerequisite for my next lesson. Everything I did prior to him was a prerequisite to be able to get in and understand what Carl Jung was talking about. Now I gobble up. I'm watching some Carl Jung every single day. I'm sitting in some of his perspectives every day. But I'm into a new one. I can't pronounce his name. It's another guy who's been introduced to me so many times, and he's really Dostoevsky. And I've got his one of his books here. This guy right here, and I was just taking a. I can't pronounce his name. It's so hard. Dostoevsky, and it it was really really hard for me. And again, I treat him like I treated Carl Jung because it's really deep stuff. This week I've been in the topic of kindness, and when it comes in, he had a story called The Idiot, and it was super interesting in his perspectives on kindness because highly sensitive. We pride ourselves in our kindness, don't we? But that kindness is often taken advantage of. And it's actually a weakness to always try to be kind because we don't stand up for ourselves. We don't learn that lesson of no or no more or not now or not ever. It's always yes, okay, I'm on it. Let me take that. I've got it, right? And they say it's a lesson that we definitely need in our lives because kindness is important. It's something that I do pride myself on, but it is in the pursuit of being kind. It's not saying that I am the kindest person in the whole world, that I am so kind, I am never mean, I am right. Like, I'm swatting flies today, and I certainly needed that lesson on kindness to say no, right? It's not, it's an imperfection to think even that we are even close to being kind. And there was, yeah, I made all kinds of notes on it, but I've got a few books sitting here because I was working online too, for my trip in September. I have no idea how it's happening, but I want to see how the fires were going on. Tammy, did you see the footage of that the rail line of that train car out in the middle of a forest fire, and the whole train was surrounded all the way around with huge, scary flames, and it couldn't move. It had to stay off to the side because there was another train coming from the opposite way, and they were trying to speed that train up because this other train had to wait, right? Otherwise, there would have been a train crash between the two vehicles. You saw that, right? Wow, I never saw anything like that, you know. And that was actually the conductors who made that footage because what are they going to do? They're trapped in their train car. They can't go anywhere. They can't get out of the train or they would be like in flames, right? And they can't move the train anywhere. They're just telling that other train, move as fast as you can, get by us as fast as you can. And when, I don't know if you saw the footage also of the train lights coming through the smoke on the train tracks, and they were just like, oh my goodness, here it is. And they're just like, go fast, and it just sped through like it was subway, right? Like it was a subway train. And that was pretty scary. And I bet you they were pretty relieved when they got out of that. And that train line, I'm sure, was shut down. It's we got over 100 forest fires. They said today 78 of the forest fires in Ontario are very dangerous. They're out of control. And so I wanted to see the provincial parks, right? I'm not being selfish in that and inconsiderate because I do need to know if they close down any of the provincial parks because some of the provincial parks that I have on my itinerary for this year are in the northwestern area of that province, right? And also in the Thunder Bay area, they have the forest fires too, and and that's where I go digging for amethyst when I go on these trips. I always stop up at this amethyst mine and I dig for amethyst, right? So I wanted to see if anything was shut down in that area. And it seems right now all the provincial parks are still open. So I guess even though the fires are not contained, they're not in the direct path that would interfere with the parks. But I don't know how long that is going to be feasible to not shut down any of the provincial parks. I know a couple of years ago when these fires happened, right? All of Canada. Remember, the Americans are all saying, "Those Canadians, can't you do something about all the smoke? You're ruining our summer." Our summer got ruined too because of those fires, but the fires are not something we really have control. We can do our very best to try and put them out and contain them, but one of those things that we do is we throw water on them, right? We have those great big water planes that fly over and drop water, and you know when you drop water on planes, they're going to produce a lot of smoke in that. And that was 2 years ago, and we're just in the beginning of July, and we have over 100 now in Manitoba. I'm not too sure how we're doing with the fires, right? I love Ontario. I should be more considerate of the province that I do live in. I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba. But the Ontario provincial parks, I go every single year. I do a park tour, and it's an experience that I give myself. This year, I'm not quite sure if it's even going to be possible because it's only the beginning of July and the fires are so bad. They haven't shut down any of the provincial parks. I just came out of their reservation services and it looks like all their parks are still open in the moment. Some of them are contained, like restricted because they're the ones that have the what do you call that? The ones that they're not campsites, they're backcountry campsites where they actually take their canoes and they canoe in wilderness and they have designated spots where they can camp. So they've shut those ones down, obviously, because if those fires do get out of control, it would be hard to track these campers and these adventurers that are out in the backcountry, right? So those are kind of restricted, but the actual campsites in the provincial parks, they're still up and running in the moment. Um, Tammy says, yes, Cindy, it was bad. I heard that there are 830 Canadian wildfires. That many. Wow. 830 Canadian wildfires right now. And in the United States, there are 108. That's it? In the United States, 108? And they get pretty hot down there in the States too, right? 108 wildfires right now. Um, AI gave me 830 altogether in Canada. I do not know if it's 100% correct, though. And that's true. AI we got to make sure that we double check our numbers, and right, because AI is in the process of learning too. Every time we ask a question, every time we source topics and information, that is a growing process for AI also. So might be a little bit different story 5 or 10 years from now, that they'll be more compact and more exact in the information, but they're in the process of learning too. So yeah, I love that you double check and you don't take things 100% as fact. But I love that the information is getting to us, because if I hadn't seen that video of that train caught in the fires in Ontario, I wouldn't have thought to take a look at the provincial parks and see how they were faring in the moment. It's important for me to keep updated in that, right? It may probably have to say affect my trip, but then again, I had already made that decision just to, right, to let it go. If it could somehow come to be in September, I'm just going to let it go. And, right, if it comes to me, it's mine. If it doesn't come to me, it wasn't meant to be. And again, I'm not going to cry over the spilt milk, right? I'm still going to try. I'm still keeping updated. And, as these parks do get shut down, because I'm going to assume some of them are going to be shut down, I'm going to change the itinerary, right? And maybe, my sister is working at getting her driver's license, and I'm going to a pig roast for a few days in August, and my sister said that I could take her car for a few days. So that's amazing. So I can take all my camping gear. I'll be able to make a video for you guys, an outdoor explore. It'll be lots of fun. They have 15 bands. They have 15 bands, and because they're all covers and stuff, so there won't be any copyright strikes or anything, because I'll be able to use the music, right? And the camping experience and being out in the outdoor and being around fun people, right? It's been a long time since I've been around big party crews. And, you know, I was actually who was I talking to? Oh, my brother-in-law. We were having a conversation yesterday, because he's very much like me. He's his own best friend. He spends a lot of time with himself, right? His thinking and in his mind. But he likes to go off and do things by himself. He loves bike riding. So when he gets home from work, or if he has a day off, he'll get up and he'll get on the bike, and he'll just take off on his own for the day, right? And he just spends that time with himself, and he really enjoys it. Now, where was I going with that? But oh yeah, because I was saying to him, he's like that. He doesn't need tons of people. He doesn't need to be totally social, but he can do it, and he does do it. My brother-in-law is actually an actor, and he just did a walk-on role, and he with some famous movie stars too, right? He just finished a movie too not long ago with John Travolta. John Travolta, I don't it had the movie hasn't been released yet, but I guess it's coming out soon. And he just finished a movie with John Travolta too. And he gets these parts all the time. And if you knew my brother-in-law, he's a very quiet, right? He's a lovely man. He's right. He walked me down the aisle. He was one of my very best friends in the entire world. And but very much like me, I always drew people that were like me, right? I rejected the narcissist. If you were nasty to me, right, then I didn't want you around me, right? I didn't want you around me, but I always drew people who were like me. So I always had lots of empaths and lots of loners, right? People who hung out with themselves, private people in the, that were there. I also had narcissists in my life, but narcissists that respected my boundaries, that know that I wasn't going to put up with any guff. And because I'm somebody who looks at intent, right? I know lots of narcissists, they just beef off, but I know in their hearts they're not like that, right? But the moment they need to get that energy out of the system, and it's important for us to feel people out that way, because again, those masks, right, that the people, they represent themselves as something that they're not. And if people out there, right, most people are not feeling people the way the sensitives feel people out, right? And we're not hyper, most people are not hyper vigilant in that way, that are looking at the intent of people. And it's somebody can come off gruff, that when they say, oh, my husband, he's so gruff, he thinks he's so tough and everything, but in actuality he's just a teddy bear, right? That kind of idea. That's somebody who's actually feeling out the truth of somebody, right? But it's going to be fun. I'm going camping. There's going to be a lot of people. It's a big fundraiser. They have a pig roast, right? They roast a great big pit of a pig, and I love the pig roast. 15 bands. It's mostly all old rock and roll, maybe a little bit of metal. I'm not a big metal fan. I'm familiar with all the metal music, right? I can't sing any of them. I'm not interested in singing the metal music. But I used to like the boys who liked the metal music, right? So I always went to like Metallica and Bon Jovi, and right now you think that's all soft rock, but in actuality that was as about as hard as it got, in the 90s. And we had lots of fun in that, going to festivals and stuff. But as much as I can be with myself, by myself, I can be very social too. And it's not forced either. I enjoy it, right? I enjoy being around and talking and interacting, and right? And I'm not a big partier or anything. I'm probably not going to get drunk or anything like that, right? I'm sure it's lots of booze and stuff going on, but that's not my thing. I'll just be out there just to enjoy the experience. But I'll make sure that I film it, so at least we have one adventure, just in case all those forest fires go a little bit crazy down over the course of the summer. Because, like I said, we're just getting into summer now, and it's getting bad. And not only are we dealing with fires, we're dealing with flooding too, right? And that's that crazy town in Nino, right? That's kind of mixing the pot. But it's an experience for us, so that we are familiar and we recognize, like, oh my goodness, global warming's coming with all those glaciers melting and all the heat and storms and tornadoes and stuff touching down. Like, we had quite a few tornadoes here already in Manitoba, and usually that's a rarity too, to have tornadoes touching down here in Manitoba. Okay, you guys, yibber yabbering. Hello, Eugene. Hello. Um, Tammy says, yes, Cindy, I am grateful for Google and all the great vital info and news, everything and anything that a person wants to know. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. We live in that age, right? And it's put out there, but there's so many distractions out there, the TikToks and the Instagram. And I get sucked into it every once in a while too, and I'll find myself, oh my goodness, I've been on there for like 5 minutes already. Get off of there, Cindy. And then I'm back into something else, right? So we all get to make the choices how we want to use this age of AI learning. We get to make those choices, and whether or not you want to play fancy, realistic video games and be in that wonderland of unrealness, because it is unreal, right? Like, I love being a human. I love life, right? I don't want to be all in my head all the time. That's why I love going for my walks. Like, there's no guarantee I'm not going to be in my head when I go for my walks. But usually I'm present. I'm with the houses and the gardens and the birds and the trees, right? So that's that opportunity to pull away a little bit when I get too punch drunk, to when I get too overwhelmed in what I'm doing online. But it's a balance, you guys, right? It's in the choices to balance in how we use this age of AI learning. We don't want to just be stuck in one aspect. Oh my goodness. Here's a good example. These Instagram videos, I keep stopping at these dumpling openings. Have you seen those videos, Tammy? I never saw anything so silly in my entire life. The people who are freaking out on these dumpling things, and they get so excited about a sparkly dumpling. And I'm going, oh my goodness, parents are spending big bucks to buy these kids these things. Oh, don't even take a look, Tammy, because maybe you'll get addicted to it. And I'm not even interested in it, in all truth. But what I am interested in is the energy of it, how it impacts people in the crazy town of their own minds, that they feel they need. It's like a container of dump. They have them all size, little teeny weeny ones, medium ones. They even have them that are like this big, and you pull the lid off, and the idea is to get a dumpling, and it's kind of a rubbery thing full of fluids, and people just freak out, like they hit people and stuff if they see somebody else gets the one that they don't want. Some people will buy like 20 of them, and they'll do little Instagram shows, and they'll open up these dumplings consistently, and they keep getting a pink one or a yellow one or a blue one, and they're just throwing them behind them. I'm going, oh my goodness, that probably cost you, right? Probably cost 15 or $20 for one of those things. And you're just opening them like candies just to find the one that you want. And I'm thinking that's just ridiculous. And it's not even an interesting, fun toy at all. It's just something that marketing has gotten people addicted to. It's kind of like that. There was a teddy bear that was really popular not too long ago. Um, I can't remember. They were just little furry teddy bears, right? People, labubus, that's what they called them. It's the same idea, but instead of a labubu, it's now a Chinese dumpling. Oh, I have to get off of those things. I really have. I've been like watching them for, oh, it's got to be a week now. Every time I go on my phone, one gets, because as soon as you go and look at one, they'll introduce more, right? What your interest is what's going to be served to you, right? That's why it's important for you to stay in the topics, the hobbies, and the interests that are yours. Otherwise, you're going to get divvied out from everybody that you're going to have to. Be careful though, Tammy. It can be addictive. These kids and adults, they're going mad for these things, right? They're standing in line at the Walmarts, and they're selling out of them, and they're pre-ordering. whole cases, and they'll put the whole case down and they'll do videos just opening up all these dumplings just to find one sparkly dumpling. And now they got a new dumpling with diamonds. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, these are the stupidest things I ever saw. But again, like I said, it's not like I'm watching because I'm interested in the dumplings. I'm interested in the emotions of the people opening up the dumplings, because some of them are getting really upset when they open up a whole case of dumplings and they don't have one dumpling that they want. They start throwing these things away. Sometimes they dig their nails into the dumpling because it's rubber, and the nails kind of pop it like a balloon, and all this goo oozes out of them because they're so angry that they wasted all their money on dumplings that they didn't want. Yeah, just don't get addicted. I'm coming off just talking about me. Talking about it makes me want to come off of it. But I've been on them for about a week now, so it's time for me to come off of them. They won't last. They'll be on to something else. It'll be like uh, uh, well, they've always marketed something silly, right? And turned it into something, whether it was, remember the sea monkeys in the 60s and 70s that we used to buy and put them in water and we watched them grow and it was just bacteria. Then we had those little clay pots that had holes in the head, and you would grow grass on it and it would make it look like it had hair, right? We got it. Pet rocks. Remember the pet rocks? We had the pet rocks in the 80s. It was just a rock. It is. It's a trend, is what it is. It's a trend. And it's been around. I'm looking back now, right? It's been a trend. Yeah. Okay, you guys. Let's grab a card. If you've never hung out with me before, these are 54 powerful words. These are my deck. I pull a card, whatever the word is. It's the first perspective that comes to mind. Sometimes it's an experience, something, or it's something I learned, something I got into in a conversation, right? Something in an experience that I had. But it's always the first thing that hits me in the head when I see the word. Sometimes my dad would never let us waste our money on a rock. He'd say, "We're going to the beach on the weekend. You can get all kinds of rocks that you want." Okay, you guys, let's grab a card. I hope everybody's having a great night. Thank you for coming into my live tonight. The word we have, wow, what were we talking about tonight? Genuineness. Let's get the thumbnail. Do it on this side. Genuineness is being comfortable enough to be yourself, right? And it is so important. It's what I opened up with tonight. To be able, if you are online, whether you're on TikTok, Instagram, you have a YouTube channel, even if you are a private person, you can do videos and you can just let it upload to your Google Photos, and they're for prosperity. And 1,000 years from now, when they're looking through all these things and they say, well, who do we want to bring back? And it'll say, oh, we got so much on Cindy, and Cindy was herself. At the very least, you might not have liked her, but you could appreciate that she was interesting and she was genuine. She was herself, right? She was herself. So let's bring Cindy back. Now there's a scary thought, right? But at the same time, that would be kind of an honor. I would consider it an honor, 100%. If I can't get the message out, right, in my own lifetime, I would appreciate another shot 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, even if physically Cindy's not here, that they thought so highly of the fact that I was myself, that I wasn't putting on airs, that I allowed myself to make mistakes. I allowed myself to fail, right? And I allowed that to be right, expressed in my live shows and in my podcasts and in those Google diaries that I did, in my Instagram posts. Oh, I have a gazillion followers on Facebook, but I don't even go on to Facebook except for my marketplace, and I've probably got like 20,000 followers on Facebook, and I don't even go on to Facebook. But you know what? This is social media, isn't it? And those bots are in every word that we say, right? It's a learning process for these platforms too, for this age of AI learning, that the more of us that can find our voice, right, the more genuine of a representation this age of AI learning can pick up. And when they finally decide, right, in that petri dish, that they're going to bring Cindy back, that they can recognize that they're bringing back a lot of people who are just sitting there with their ties and going, "Ladies and gentlemen," right, in a very ungenuine way. It's polite, it's professional, right? It's setting the tone of the conversation, but the idea is to be yourself, right? To be yourself, so the people who were meant to find you, right, can find me. Because if I wasn't myself, I'm not sure if Tammy would find me, right? That she would be hanging out with me the way she does, right? That I would have this opportunity to build relationships, to build trust, right? And that's what it's all about. When you're genuine, you can find your own, or your own can find you. Okay, you guys. That's all I've got for you tonight. Thank you so much for coming in. How was your day today, Tammy? Did you have a good day? Did you work today? Chia pets. Yes, that's what they were called. Chia pets. Um, oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Everybody, you have a great night, and I will be back tomorrow.